Let's go live to our CSN Bethesda affiliate and bring in J.I. Halsell from FootballOutsider.com. All right, Jay, explain exactly how free agency is going to work with the NFL headed toward what looks to be an uncapped year. As of tonight, guys can go out and start signing people for $1 billion if they want.
In theory, but the reality is that, one, you don't have the quality of player on the unrestricted free agent market that you have had traditionally, and that's because, you know, part of the uncapped year are the new rules. And one of those new rules is saying that, you know, you have to go, you know, from 4 years in order to become an unrestricted free agent. It's now 6 years. And so now that's why you see, you know, a Sean Merriman out in San Diego or Braylon Edwards with the Jets. You know, those guys historically would have hit the open market in free agency, but now, you know, those guys are restricted free agents. So you just don't have the quality of player out in the market. And now, don't get me wrong, you have, you know, the Julius Peppers of the world, the Carlos Dansbys of the world, but because of that, you know, that limited pool, you won't see a whole lot of unrestricted free agent movement. Now, you are starting to see a lot of, you know, veteran players, 30-plus years old, being released, and so you'll see those guys get signed, but you're not going to see the plethora of multi-million, just big-dollar deals in the unrestricted free agent market that you've seen historically.
Just talk about the feeling with these restricted free agents. I mean, they've got to be upset. You know, there's got to be some, you know, a little bit of anger going into when they start workouts and stuff like that, because they're like, man, I could have been unrestricted, but here I'm dealing with this situation.
Yeah, good luck with those, even seeing those guys come to off-season workouts, because technically, until they sign that restricted free agent tender, they don't have to show up because they're not under contract. So, you know, to kind of voice their opinion about how they feel about the system and being tendered, you know, you may see a Sean Merriman, or here in Washington, see a disgruntled Carlos Rogers say, I'm not signing my tender until June 15th at the very last minute. And plus, by, you know, holding off on signing that tender, that allows time for, you know, their agent to try to seek an offer sheet, you know, for them to go to a different team. But even, you know, trying to go to another team via that route, you got to understand that NFL teams value their draft picks, whether there's a salary cap or not. And so you're not going to really see, even in the restricted free agent market, see a lot of guys switch teams. But you definitely will see a lot of disgruntled players. So, you know, you could see those guys boycott off-season workouts as a result.
What's the situation? We've heard a lot of, you know, about the uncapped year, about the top end. What about the bottom end? Are we going to see, I believe there's no minimum salary cap either. Are we going to see teams, you know, trying to save money, getting rid of a lot of players to maybe help prepare themselves for 2011, where there might be a strike, kind of build up their strikes fund, so to speak?
Well, the big thing to realize about the salary cap and the salary floor that you're referring to is understand that those restrictions don't refer to cash as much as those restrictions are applied to salary cap accounting. So from an accounting perspective, you don't have a cap, and from an accounting perspective, you don't have a floor. From a true cash perspective, you know, you saw a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season who, short of paying Kellen Winslow, you know, a pretty lucrative contract, they didn't really spend any money, but yet we're still, from a cap accounting standpoint, able to kind of get above that $108 million floor. So, you know, I think those same teams, you know, the Tampas of the world, the Buffaloes of the world, you'll continue to see them, you know, operate similar to how they have, you know, in the most recent past. But it also kind of goes to a bigger point that in the uncapped year, I don't really foresee teams really operating any differently than how they've operated with a salary cap, whether that's a Tampa not spending a bunch of money, and, you know, Washington, you know, historically they spent a lot of money, and, you know, maybe with the regime change they pull that back, but, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, that sort of answered my question, but I'll ask it anyway. Again, I mean, is this a case of teams having to just not spend boatloads of money because they're going to handcuff themselves and kill themselves down the line? I mean, who knows what the next CBA is going to be, and they just can't afford to have to blow up their team later on?
Absolutely, and it's because of the uncertainty that you have out there with, you know, the prospect of a CBA getting done by the 2011 season and the prospect of a salary cap being part of that CBA and not knowing what the rules are going to be. You know, in theory, a team like, say, Washington, by virtue of all of these terminations that they've, you know, done today, and maybe signing a big-name free agent like a Julius Peppers or a Carlos Dansby, as a result of those moves, let's say they incur a high team salary amount in 2010. Well, when the salary cap cap comes back in 2011, if it does come back as part of a new CBA, you know, teams like the Redskins or any other team that incur high team salary could theoretically become penalized by for doing that. Whereas, you know, a team like Pittsburgh, who has already come out and said that, you know, they're going to abide by their own internal, you know, budget in lieu of a salary cap. Those teams who have managed it conservatively, you know, because of the ambiguity or uncertainty of the future, you know, if you were Pittsburgh, you might feel a certain kind of way about the Redskins, who spent a bunch of money or incurred high team salary, coming back on the same footing as you in 2011 under a new salary cap system. So I would venture to say that the vast majority of teams in the league are going to operate just as they have operated with a salary cap.
All right, Jay, I got a few more for you, and then we'll let you go. One, could a guy, if he is in such hot demand, maybe there's a rule that says you can't do this, I haven't been able to find it. Let's say it's Peppers. He says to the Bears, okay, I've got $25 million on the table guaranteed, or $40 million, or 30, whatever the number is, but you're going to put a clause in there that if there's a work stoppage, I keep getting paid. There is nothing that's going to prevent me from collecting all my money. I don't care what happens. A, can that happen? B, explain the rule where the top 8 teams have additional restrictions put on them.
To your first point, the union has really been encouraging its agents to seek lockout protection language in their contracts. Now, good luck with that, because I don't really see why a club would really, you know, entertain that, given, you know, the distinct possibility of a lockout. But yet the union is truly trying to get its agents to, you know, get that language put into contracts, whether it's a Julius Peppers or any other player out there. To your second question, you're referring to what's called the Final 8 plan. And the Final 8 plan refers to or applies to the 8 teams that played in the divisional round of the playoffs, where the Final 4 teams are actually limited even further. So let's talk about those Final 4 teams that played in the AFC and NFC championship games, respectively. Those teams cannot sign an unrestricted free agent until they lose an unrestricted free agent. And then the first-year value of the contracts that are kind of being matched one for one, they have to match. So if you lose, you know, an unrestricted free agent to, let's say you're the Bears, and you lose a UFA to the Arizona Cardinals, and that UFA goes to the Cardinals and signs a $5 million contract in year 1. So that means you can then sign a UFA to replace that guy with a first-year value up to $5 million. And now the Final 4 teams are strictly prohibited with that particular rule. Now, the other 4 teams that lost in the divisional round, they have that same one-for-one match, but they have a couple of exceptions that they can leverage, so they're not restricted as much as those Final 4 teams. Those exceptions are basically they can sign an unlimited amount of UFAs to contracts with first-year values of roughly no more than $3.5 million. So they can have an unlimited amount of exceptions in that regard. Then they have one exception that they can use to sign a player of a first-year value of at least $6 million. So you can go out there and get one big-time, high-priced UFA if you're one of those teams that lost in the divisional round. So, you know, it's one of those mechanisms built into collective bargaining agreement to try to, you know, preserve the parity in the league that was created when you had a salary cap. And so now that the salary cap is gone, you know, you're really trying to restrict those top 8 teams who did well, obviously, in their season, and kind of allow those other 24 teams to kind of build themselves up so they can hopefully get into, you know, a Final 8 the next year if there is no cap.
Jay, we appreciate your time. As I let you go, you said, you know, good luck with that on trying to get lockout protection, and why would a team do that? We have seen in every sport owners unable to push themselves away from the salary buffet. They keep gorging themselves on contracts, and they end up spending money that they probably can't believe they did. There's some desperate guy out there, whether his name's Dan Snyder or someone else, I'm all in, whatever it takes.
We'll see. I mean, that's kind of the excitement of this year's, you know, free agency market. There is that uncertainty because it is a brave new NFL world.
Thank you for your time. Very impressive stuff.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. J.I. Halsell, who joined us. That guy's good on the cap. He knows it all.